Yo, what is up, guys? Will here from Fantasy Flock with Canyon. We're going to be looking at our top 10 rookie rankings for the upcoming fantasy season. We're going to be looking at from a points format perspective, but we'll still mention some category things as well. For reference, points we're going to be looking at: 1 point is a point, rebound is 1.2, an assist is 1.5, turnover is -1, defensive stats are 3 points each. But kicking it off, we're only going to do 10. I do want to call that out. I know we've been doing 12 for some of our other tier list videos. As far as fantasy relevance goes from rookies, obviously a lot of this is speculation and projection. We haven't seen these guys play in the NBA. And from a fantasy production standpoint, looking at last season, guys like Cade, Scotty, Mobley ended up being top 50, 60 fantasy players, really fantasy relevant. But you look at the 10th guy last year, Dosunmu, who I love as a player, but not as fantasy relevant if you look at just, overall production. Was closer to, the 200s plus. So we're going to kick it off here in the first tier, first overall rookie. Canyon, who you got?
Yes, sir. First overall rookie I have here is the first overall rookie taken in this year's draft. It's Paolo Banchero, taken number 1 for a reason. He's poised to be one of the best rookies in fantasy this season. In that short summer league stint that we saw from him, he impressed quite well. He shot well from 3, which a lot of people were worried about. He's a savvy scorer, versatile scorer. He can score from all areas of the court. He can play make and handle the ball beautifully as a 6'10 forward. Just great overall feel for the game. So he walks into this young Orlando team with a lot of potential and a lot of usage there for him to grab there. He should be one of the higher scoring forwards on that team, one of the higher scoring players on that team. So he can give you a lot of points, a lot of rebounds, a lot of potential for assists from a guy like this. Defensively is yet to be, discovered maybe, but I think Paolo overall fantasy production, usage on the team that he's on, he should be the number 1 guy here.
Definitely. And in the same tier, number 2, we've got Jabari Smith, who I like a lot. I know we talked about, summer league performance. Jabari was one of those guys who, the numbers didn't look as great as people were anticipating. Didn't shoot as well from 3 as I know he can, and I expect him to this upcoming season. But still, you got to like the landing spot. You talk about the Rockets, Christian Wood going to the Mavs and that kind of opening up a space where Jabari just perfectly fills in. I think he can, put up close to the production we saw from a guy like Christian Wood. Maybe not identical numbers in his rookie season, but I think he can get there. We talk about KPJ being a really good facilitator. Jalen Green, not as much, but, Jabari should play off ball a decent amount. And I think if he can score from all 3 levels, immediately can be really fantasy relevant as a rookie.
Yeah, I actually love Jabari Smith this year. I think he's probably the best scorer in this draft. I think Paolo can score in different ways, but pure shooters and scorers, I think Jabari's probably got the most upside. Just didn't really show it that much in Summer League, but I think he'll be all right, especially on the Houston team that runs so fast, high pace, not much defense. So he should be good in that setup for sure. Next up here in a tier of his own, we've got Keegan Murray. 22 years old, perfect plug and play guy for Sacramento, taken at number 4 overall. Kind of why they took him, right? They needed that forward spot filled. They're trying to win now, get in the playoffs as the GM promised. But he'll see the court immediately. He's got good defense, good versatile defense, good 3-point shooting, and surprisingly, he's pretty savvy on the interior. We haven't seen him come up against big bigs in like the NBA will show him versus like the Big Ten, apart from Illinois with like Kofi Cockburn. But he should post some solid scoring numbers, rebounds, and defensive stat lines, and a lot of minutes and a lot of usage on this team. So yeah, he'll see the court a lot. I think he'll score a lot. So I think he's got rebounding upside and a really, really good defensive upside.
Yeah, like Keegan a lot. I mean, he feels like a really complete player. You talk about a win now guy. I think he's got a good opportunity for sure. Next up in a new tier, we've got Jaden Ivy. I'm going to give the bias alert right now. We're Pistons fans. Love the Ivy pick. Love the upside. But just looking at fantasy production for the upcoming year, I think I have him a tier below Keegan Murray. Like him a lot, though. He looked really good in the summer league. It was limited work, obviously unfortunate with the injury. But, man, he looked dynamic. We talk about the, Ja Morant upside comparisons he's already getting. And I think that's, something we could see and see glimpses and flashes of this season. It was cool to get to see him play off ball in the summer league too. That's kind of a big thing we've talked about a lot heading into the season for the Pistons. just how he's going to fit with Cade, being so on ball at Purdue, and, seeing what that kind of fits and looks in the NBA. And, the one thing people talk about him, a part of his game, the 3-point shooting is something people have mentioned. Maybe he's not the best 3-point shooter, shot it well in the summer leagues and, was willing to take the shots. And that's what you like to see from, a fantasy asset. And, maybe the court vision as well. Maybe not the best assist guy, but I think he can play off ball and he looked like he was playing it well. I think he'll be a good fit. And talk about getting to play with a guy like Cade and kind of bringing up the players around you. I think he'll be able to unlock Jaden Ivy for sure. So I think he looked dynamic. I could really see him being one of the higher scoring rookies. It wouldn't surprise me if he was up there. Dark horse rookie of the year candidate. But no, all jokes aside, I think he's really dynamic. I think he's immediately going to be, a starter and play decent minutes for Detroit. And yeah, I mean, all bias aside, I'm excited. I think he has a ton of upside. I could see him putting up similar numbers to a lot of the guys ahead of him.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be a Pistons fan to see this kid's probably the most explosive kid in the draft and maybe the highest offensive ceilings in the draft. If you watched any college basketball last year, you'll see, him in Purdue and how electric he was. So there's no question of that. I think as far as fantasy production goes, it's kind of limited to just his scoring for now. I know they want to improve his facilitating game, but yeah, for now it's just, high scoring upside, but facilitating, rebounding, there's not a ton of like high ceiling there. But in that same tier here at 5, we've got Ben Mathurin, another guy that I love in this draft. Fantastic shooter and athlete that could see super solid usage with the selfless Halliburton alongside him. Pacers had a ton of guards last year. They moved along from most of them. They've still got Hield, Duarte, Mathurin, and Halliburton. Should see some good minutes. But Mathurin, a good chance to start. They used a lot of capital on him, or high capital, I should say, on him. So Duarte's been a good bench role for them. So I think Mathurin could still maintain really good minutes off the bench here and be a great, versatile scorer. Super, super athletic once again. They got to improve the defense a little bit. But I think Mathurin, especially on this team, like alongside Halliburton, you talk about Ivy with Cade. Mathurin with Halliburton, I think could be a nice little marriage as well, help him grow a lot as well. Also looked really good in summer league, but like a lot of these guys, you get like a sore, like in Mathurin's case, sore left big toe, and he just missed the rest of the season, or not the season, the summer league season. So a lot of these injuries kind of hold them out. So not a lot of weight as far as the summer league looks go, but Mathurin at 5 here, I think he's got a lot of upside.
Yeah, definitely. You talk about situations too from a fantasy perspective. The thing that's going to vault a lot of these rookies into fantasy relevance is just situation, right? So, these top 5, I will say this closes out this tier here. I would be surprised if they're healthy, if they're not starting for, most of the season, if not playing starter minutes almost immediately. And just to kind of mention that, talking about the next guy, I think in this next tier, we're kind of getting into the tier where I'm not projecting them to immediately be starters, playing starter minutes. It's going to be more rotational. I think there's a chance we see them starting at some point in the season, but I don't think it's a lock immediately. And that's Mark Williams, a guy I want to mention. Charlotte moved off from Trez, went to the Sixers. And Mark Williams, he's an interesting prospect. I think it, originally was, Jalen Duren getting the draft, and I was super excited for that kind of fit. And I feel similarly with Mark Williams with Charlotte. Super high pace, getting to play alongside LaMelo Ball. Mark Williams, nothing crazy offensively in the summer league, but looked really good as a defender. And I think the funny thing about rookies is what can buy you minutes is playing well defensively. So I could really see him, immediately seeing minutes potentially over guys like Plumlee and, even PJ Washington, if he is able to kind of bring that defensively for a Charlotte team that needed it bad last season. So I think that, maybe you're not as excited offensively about Mark Williams as a lot of the other guys we've talked about, but I think would not surprise me if he's playing decent minutes and, solid rebounder, solid defender, can, get you stats. And for rookies, you just kind of need minutes, right? To be able to be fantasy relevant. I think he's one of those guys that I'm projecting more than the guys below him for the most part.
Yeah, I think there's quite a bit of a drop-off probably from this top 5 that we gave out to a guy like Mark Williams. Again, because of mainly the minutes and the potential starting potential for the top 5 guys. But like you said, the defensive ability is huge for the guys down here. And, you'll see a common denominator with that with the guys that were coming up here next, like Dyson Daniels, another guy that's great, defensively. Perfect glue guy for this, this New Orleans roster. it's still yet to be seen how they're going to start this lineup, if Zion's back, if he's not back. Probably see Dyson Daniels off the bench to start. I'd like to see him in the starting rotation for a little bit, but that would mean kicking, Herb Jones to the bench, who's been a great guy for them. But regardless, he's a 6'6" guard. He can score on the interior really well. Great defender, great playmaker, super high IQ. Just can't shoot the three. Can't shoot the three, can't shoot free throws very well. But it's kind of like almost like a Draymond Green, if you will, right? Kind of does all the dirty work, does everything else. Super high Q, super gritty. A guy you want on your team, a glue guy. Just doesn't need to score a lot. And so as far as fantasy goes as well, I mean, the defensive stats could have huge upside for specifically points formats, but also category formats too. But just high rebounds, high assist potential, high defensive potential, and then interior scoring. But even on this team, interior scoring might not be needed as much with all the guys they have, like McCollum, Valanciunas, Zion, and Brandon Ingram. But I really like Daniels. I like this fit for Daniels a lot and the Pelicans. So we've got Daniels here at 7.
Yeah, definitely. And, talk about a guy who's not the best shooter from 3. Next up, we've got Jeremy Sohan, who I like a lot. Super athletic guy. He feels like a pop draft pick. I think we were watching the draft together, and when that pick happened, we were not surprised at all. Super athletic, a lot of upside offensively, even if he's not the greatest shooter from 3. Didn't get to see him in the summer league. But, I think he's one of those guys where, maybe different from a Dyson Daniels we just talked about. Looking at the Spurs roster, it wouldn't surprise me if he is playing solid rotational minutes, if not starting at some point in the season. I'm not going to project him to be a starter initially, but it would not shock me if that's something we do see. The Spurs, you talk about moving Murray and just looking at the roster in general. But, just talking about Sohan specifically, I think, he's got a ton of upside, and it's kind of yet to be seen how it's going to, look in the NBA. And that's kind of the case for a lot of these guys, but would not shock me if he really impresses. And I think the situation is good, potentially for us to be able to see that in the rookie year.
Yeah. Like you said, feels like a pop guy. And even if he's not a pop guy, he's going to San Antonio, which means he has a good chance to develop. Kawhi Leonard goes there, wasn't on a lot of people's radars, developed into this two-way stud. Sohan has all the capabilities of becoming a two-way stud. I don't know if I said two-hand or two-way there. Anyway, all the capabilities of becoming a two-way stud for Sohan here. Great defensively, and the Spurs are incredible at, producing talent and getting people offensively to work harder and play better. So next up in this same tier, we've got Walker Kessler. I know this might be a surprise, late first-round pick to, I believe, the Timberwolves, that got traded into that Rudy Gobert trade, and now kind of stumbles into a potential starting spot in Utah. They don't have a lot of people there, especially bigs-wise. They're definitely rebuilding, so Kessler might just become the starting 5 for Utah. He's got clearly great rebounding upside, defensive upside, interior scoring as well. He's a great hustler. He was an absolute beast at Auburn, alongside Jabari Smith, and he can continue to be that same thing, especially in the fantasy points format for Utah. He can rack up the blocks, rebounds, scoring, kind of a poor man's Rudy Gobert, I guess. Maybe too soon to say something like that, I'm sorry. But, he's got, all the fixings to be a great 5. Just obviously can't really stretch the floor. Maybe not the most athletic or the quickest rim runner, but like we said, minutes is everything for your rookies, especially in fantasy, and Kessler should see minutes.
Yeah, definitely. He's one of those guys, too, where, there's a lot of guys who aren't going to be on this list that you guys might be surprised about, and, he's a better player, and, he's going to have way more production. But just looking at the upcoming season, especially with injury with some of these guys, right? We talk about, Shaedon Sharpe, some of those guys, AJ Griffin, but I think, yeah, like you said, situation. I especially if some of these other veterans move and they're really, really blowing it up, I think it could just be he's gonna see big minutes and just gonna put up stats just because he's on the floor as a rookie. We'll see. But yeah, looking at the depth chart right now, it would not surprise me if we do see that. Final guy in the same tier, Johnny Davis, closing out the tier list here. He didn't look great in the summer league. Shut down due to injury. But I think, maybe different than a Kessler. I don't really anticipate him seeing big, starting minutes initially, but I think he might be a solid rotational guy, especially as a defender. And that's something we talk about with a lot of rookies. If you can defend, especially for a team like Washington, similar to Charlotte, struggled defensively last season. So I think if you can bring that, as a guard, I think we could see decent minutes for Johnny Davis. And, wasn't the best 3-point shooter. We'll see if that improves, but, solid scorer, very good rebounder for a guard. I think that, could be good scoring. And I think, like I had mentioned, just needing minutes from these guys, especially the bottom of the tier list here. You're talking about, guys you want to take the chance on. You want guys who are going to be solid rotational guys, because it's not shocking, especially for rookies who we really like as prospects, to, not have monster minutes. We usually see year 2, year 3, prospects that really grow, starting to see more starter minutes. But, there's rotational rookies who are like 15, 17 minute guys. And, for fantasy purposes, you're trying to find those guys who are going to play that, 25, 26 plus in the rookie year.
Yeah. Like you said, on this team specifically, probably comes off the bench. Maybe Monty Morris starts at point guard with Beal. Still yet to be seen what Washington looks like in that lineup. But Monty Morris, veteran guy, I could see him splitting minutes with Davis to kind of get Davis implemented into the NBA well. So again, defensively, good upside, hard worker, stud in college. So we know the offense can be there. So there's a lot of potential for Johnny Davis. And yeah, like you said before, this top 10 is based on, potential production, usage, guys that can just get you on the court, because you're going to put these guys in your fantasy lineup. You want to see them on the court, and you want to see them get minutes and get some stats for you. And so a lot of guys not on this list, I think are just more talented basketball players. But I don't know if they're going to get as much production. Maybe they have injury concerns. Like you said, Shaedon Sharpe, AJ Griffin. Both already have a little bit of injury concerns. Both will probably be fine, but both will be coming off a bench, and some, offensively stacked offenses in the NBA with Portland and Atlanta. Tari Eason, Ochai Agbaji, Jalen Duren, Branham, Jalen Williams. Just a lot of guys that are very talented, but, either are limited in their defensive upside or just minutes upside. So again, top 10 here we've got for fantasy points and categories, not just overall rookies where they should have been drafted. So don't come after us too hard, but yeah.
For sure. Well, that does it for the top 10 rookie tier list for the upcoming fantasy season. If you have anything on the list that you think should be moved around or think we missed, guys, let us know in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one.